Let's go. Here we are, ladies and gentlemen, live from the Pink Seats podcast, your favorite group of fellows talking football. Here we go. Spring football just a little bit over a week away, and I know we are in the heat of basketball right now with all the portal talk, everything that's going on with Pat Kelsey. Great. Let's take a break from that for a little bit, right? All that'll still be there after the show. Let's talk spring football, and we've got a full cast of characters here to do so tonight. And doing so on the From the Peak Seats podcast, powered by the State of Louisville Podcast Network, thanks to our good friends over at Kern's Corner. The show is brought to you by Frankfurt Avenue Liquors and Wine. We got a lot to get into tonight. I'm going to try to keep the intro fairly short here, but I want to do just a quick round of intros because we've got new audience members. We've got some new faces on the show, some relatively new faces. So here we go. Jacob Lane, host of From the Pink Seats podcast. You know Matt McGavick, who is the editor of the U of L Report of Sports Illustrated, as well as Vincent Lococo, former Louisville football player, former Trinity star.
Wow.
Linebacker, fullback.
So
I know, man. Bringing it out. As well as former student assistant under Scott Satterfield. And then our good friend and one of the newer members of the show, producer Keith Artoff. Did I get that right?
Nowhere close, but
Okay.
we're working on it.
Yeah, pronunciation's not my strong suit here. The guys will tell you that. We'll get there, man. That's why we
Let me guess.
Is
Is it Artoff?
So the U is silent. My ancestors just couldn't spell well.
Hey, be like that sometimes. But finally, not to be left to be last year. We saved the best for last, actually, is how I would say this. New face to the show, our friend Corey Miller. Corey, welcome into From the Pink Seats podcast live. It is great to have you on for the first time. Welcome. We rolled out the red carpet for you, buddy.
Glad to be here. Glad to be a part.
Well, like I said, we got
drop. That's for sure.
Right, exactly, man. He's really showing up and schooling us, Matt. I don't know what kind of bookshelf you got behind you, man. Is that were you at your mom's house?
I am, yeah.
Yeah.
This is ridiculous. Matt upgrades for the second live show, man. We've been doing this podcast.
Well,
I've been doing it for 3 years with him. He sat on his couch the
barking in the
entire time.
No. I'll answer that for the show. We do not want your dog barking in the background. Well, like I said, we've got a lot to get into tonight, and we want to hear from you all. We would encourage you to get involved via Twitter, via YouTube, via Facebook, wherever you're streaming from right now. Want to jump in on the show. If you've got comments, if you've got questions, feel free to drop those in here. If you're not already subscribed to the show from the Pink Seats podcast, anywhere you get your podcasts from. And you can also follow along on YouTube at the State of Lou. And I'm getting ready to rattle off about 9 Twitter accounts. So I don't expect you to remember these, but I have to do my due diligence here. At Pink Seats Pod, at the State of Lou, at U of L Report, at Vincent Lococo, at Matt_McGavick, at Jacob Lane 08, at Toph Shelf 55. Toff. Okay. Top Shelf 55. And then Corey Miller, is it 9 or 09? I should have looked that up before we started.
It's just 9.
Corey Miller 9. There we go. All right. So we've got all of that out of the way, fellas. Let's dive into spring football. It's been a lot going on over the last couple of weeks with practices, with the guys getting ready for the spring game next Friday night. So let's start here. Matt, I'm coming to you first. What have we heard from the coaches over the last couple of weeks since last time we talked? What are the standout kind of comments from them? And then let's dive into some of the players that have stood out to you on the actual practice side of things.
So just because it's topical and it happened the other day, I know one of the more viral quotes or happenings from spring ball earlier was when I asked Ron English how TJ Capers had panned out, and he had some not so glowing things to say about TJ up to that point. And fortunately, it's been we're 3 weeks into spring ball. There's plenty of time for the coaches and the players to see how players are doing. And so I asked Mark Ivey, hey, English was pretty critical about him. What have you seen out of him since? And Ivy, he's one that will talk his ass off. And he said the very first thing he said was he has made a decision to get better every day. And I like how he put an emphasis on he has made the decision. It sounded like Ron English kind of did what Rick Pitino would do back in the day, and that he would use the media to kind of motivate people. So when you put out comments like that, of course it's going to catch on. I would like to think it probably motivated him, because in watching some of the open practices, I haven't seen TJ a lot because he's primarily running with the threes right now. But he's gotten in the mix. He's made plays. Of course, something to remember is that he's a reclass, so he would technically be an early enrollee freshman right now. And even if he didn't reclass, there's a chance that he might not be on campus right now because a lot of those guys joined mid-year anyways. So like there's obviously going to need to be like a little bit of patience with waiting for him to develop and kind of grasp things and just from a maturity standpoint, like, progress in that regard. Because I mean, like, we all remember how we were as like 16, 17, 18-year-olds. I mean, we didn't have our shit together.
Nope.
Nope,
not even
like
close.
it's gonna take some time on that front. And by all accounts, in like the 3 weeks since we talked to English, it sounds like Capers has made a cognizant effort to get better, at least not only from like the on the gridiron standpoint, but from the in between the ears standpoint.
I'd love to hear that because, again, the amount of guys that you have up front this season, it's stupid, right? I mean, it's, as we've talked about, it's not only one of the best front sevens, and one of the best pass rushes in the ACC, but potentially one of the best in the country. And when you add in a guy with the talent of TJ Capers, I mean, if you go back and you look at some of the dogs that Louisville has brought in that have been that 5-star recruit, right? I mean, typically they're either not playing their freshman year or they're playing in limited roles, right? So he's not necessarily behind the curve, but if you can get him into the rotation as a redshirt freshman, after having a year of watching and really kind of learning by trial and error, I think you can throw him out there and really add something, whether it be to your special teams, whether it be to your pass rush on third down, whether it be to some of your specialty packages. I mean, he's a guy that you want out there because he is an NFL talented pass rusher. Like, you need that. Look, I mean, I know that there's a lot of guys that are ahead of him, but I think that it's really important to try to find ways for this football coaching staff to get him better and get him on the field. So I think, Matt, that's a good first start.
It's ultimately it's on him though. Like that's a great part. Like Matt said in that comment, is he is taking the initiative, because there's one of two ways that a player can go. I mean, he can tuck his tail between his legs, and at this day and age, you can up and transfer whenever. So he could have heard that and been out and into the portal. So I mean, it's very encouraging to hear that.
This defense is so deep and so good, though. I wonder how much playing time do you expect him to see come the fall?
That was going to be what I was factoring in as well, Corey, is that like when you're playing big boy, high level college football, like Louisville's trying to do, doesn't matter if you're a 5-star, you're probably not going to see the field right away unless you're one of those super dynamo top 25 guys, as opposed to like a top 247, high 4-star, low 5-star guy. So
I expect him 100% to be on every special team this year and to at least be, double-digit tackles if he's on kickoff, if he's on punt, things like that, to, make a statement at least, to give people like us something to sit back on at the end of the year and say, hey, wait till TJ shows up and he gets his opportunity at defense.
Yeah, we got an open spot on punt block now that Evan Conley finally graduated. TJ,
yeah, right.
You need to step in there.
Do you think, though, realistically, that he can end the season on the 2 deep?
Man,
that's a tall task, man.
Yeah, it's going to be hard because, like, he's running with the 3s now. I mean, the 2 guys at the starter, I mean, he's TJ Quinn and Jalen Alderman. TJ Quinn, I mean, made plays everywhere, and Jalen Alderman had a fantastic bounce-back season. I mean, and plus Stanquan Clark, he's an uber-talented linebacker, and I think he's going to get plenty of time in the rotation. And honestly, Durante Davis, the Texas A&M transfer, is someone who the coaching staff is really high on. So honestly, I think it's going to be a little bit difficult for him to really see reps this season. Now, when TJ, I can't remember like how much eligibility they have left off the top of my head, but I would think that Quinn and Alderman are close to the end. I know for a fact that Durante Davis only has 1 year left. So I think, in terms of maybe seeing him carve out like a regular spot on the linebacking rotation, it probably wouldn't come until 2025. But I mean, he'd technically be like a true, like a non-reclass sophomore at that point. So, I mean, it's about what you would expect, honestly.
So, Matt, just by taking from the comments there, because I know there had been previous conversation about maybe he's an edge rusher and we try to work him in there. So from what you've seen, is he like, we're going to have him stand up and play linebacker here, or?
It sounds like they're trying to keep him at like, that weak side linebacker, like inside linebacker spot. I mean, he's got edge rush potential. I mean, he played damn near every position in the front 7 in high school except for defensive tackle. So he's incredibly position versatile, but it seems like that Louisville has kind of decided they're going to keep him primarily at linebacker. Now, could he kind of move around? Sure. I mean, he's shown in high school that he has the versatility to play all over the front seven. So to kind of pigeonhole him into one spot would probably not be the best idea. But I think his staying power is probably going to come at inside linebacker.
Makes sense.
Transfer portal just scares me after year two. Some of this top tier talent, whether it's him or Pierce or whoever, if you're not seeing regular rotation, I just start to get scared.
Right. But you got to
transfer
balance
portal
that.
Makes me scared freaking
Right.
up until the season starts.
At the same point in time, though, we use the transfer portal. I would, over 50% of our starters are probably going to be portal additions as well. So, it's always a threat, but it's always an opportunity as well. I mean, we just saw a 5-star edge rusher, redshirt freshman from LSU hit the portal today. That if he's interested in Louisville, I know they talked to him back when they were at Purdue. So I wouldn't complain.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see, just from a roster perspective, what happens over the next couple of weeks because of the fact that they're over scholarship numbers as at this point. So there's going to have to be some subtractions on the roster somewhere as guys are going to have to kind of even out and figure out how to, kind of get to that number of the allotted players that they're allowed to have. But Matt, it's great to hear that Capers is kind of, woken up, and, if you can figure out how to do that early in your college career, that's a big deal. Some guys don't figure it out until they're juniors or seniors. What else? We were talking about a third string linebacker. So we're off to a roaring start here in terms of the nerdiness of this show. But what else, man? There's got to be some
hopefully TJ remembers the guy that, provoked this whole thing later on down the road. So, when he's doing a post-game interview with Matt, he's going to be like, I'm not answering your question. It just moves on.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was the one that did ask English that, so.
It's all your fault, Matt.
Yep.
Yeah, if he goes
master
portal,
motivator.
it's your fault.
Master motivator.
Master what?
So
you can't fix that in post. But another, I know what you're about to ask, Jacob, what else is going to stood out in spring ball? The last couple, let me preface this by saying the first 2 open practices that I saw, it was primarily won by the offense, and the passing game was really clicking. The running backs were finding holes, and I was starting to wonder, okay, the offense is looking good, but I'd like to see the defense start winning a lot more reps consistently. And the third and fourth practices, especially the third practice, those were defensive heavy open practices right there. The third one, the run game couldn't hardly get going at all, save for a couple. The cornerback room, which we've heard on a few occasions on how the coaches really like that, how deep it is, the guys and playmakers they have there, they really shine. And it wasn't just the 2 or 3 projected starters, the entire room, the entire secondary really has looked phenomenal. And that's a unit where a couple guys have been kind of banged up a little bit. I know Blake Ruffin, the safety, he's been running with the rehab guys. And I think there's another safety in that mix. I can't remember who exactly, but I don't think it's hyperbole. Now, again, only halfway through spring ball, so I could be way off. I wouldn't be shocked if Louisville has a top 10 secondary in college football next season, because they are just so deep and stacked at both corner and safety. They're stacked at corner, safety, nickelback, star/rover, whatever set or front you want to use, that where you a nickel, dime, any of that. Louisville's got the horses to be able to throw out a bunch of different disguises on the back end to kind of to confuse quarterbacks.
I'm anxious to see the pressures that Ron English draws up with having that ability to like you said, Matt, to be able to feel confident in that nickel and dime position, to 1, go out there and cover, and 2, even a lot of these guys can pass rush as well. So, I mean, the stuff that you can draw up is really limitless with that.
Yeah, and you've got options if you wanted to go a step further and go quarters, 5 corners out there.
Yeah.
You've got Quincy Riley, who's obviously it's Quincy. I really think he's got All-American potential because he's that good. Tayon Holloway looks really good. So is Taz Nicholson, Corey Thornton. Like there's Quincy, the 3 transfers, and Aaron Williams is another guy that the staff is really high on, and especially the last 2 practices, he has looked really good. Like, I think he'll be a bigger fixture in the cornerback room and in the cornerback rotation than a lot of people realize. He's balling right now.
Yeah, and it's not hyperbolic. Like you mentioned, Louisville potentially being a top 10 secondary. It's not just coming from us homers in the Louisville media either. Like I believe it was Late Kick with CBS Sports Network. They were talking about
Josh Payne,
Louisville. Yep. And he was talking about how this secondary is dangerous. So it's not just us being homerific homers. Like L&N's going to be a no-fly zone when we're on defense next year, and I'm looking forward to it.
Just
having MJ Griffin back is going to be awesome. It's like that's cherry on top for this defense. Having him back without a brace or anything on his leg, that was I said it the first live show. That was the best thing for me, was seeing him out there with nothing, on his knees.
The tax boys are back, fellas.
I was just going to say, please, as long as we don't call them that. I mean, you really went there.
That was like the year of bad nicknames and poor covers for media guides.
Yeah, man. That's a blast from the past there. But no, it's great to hear that about the secondary, considering what we've seen from the last 5, 6, 7 years of football. We've always there's been a mix of some okay secondaries. There's been some great players, but it's been since the early Petrino 2.0 days where you've had that group of dynamic corners and safeties really all humming at the same time. So I'm really excited about what this group is going to bring. Matt, on the other side of the ball, offensively, what have you seen from a progression standpoint with Tyler Shuck? What have you seen from some of the position groups where they're bringing in a lot of players like tight end, wide receiver?
Progression. He got married.
There we go.
+1.
Boom. Done.
Yeah, man.
Next.
It looked like
good
it was
judgment too. That was a
beach.
gorgeous.
Yeah, man. That's what I'm talking about. A little elope. Like, I mean, come on now. I think it was in Texas somewhere.
The fact that he got coached to move practice so he could get married was
that's
impressive enough.
That's
impressive enough.
And you were doubting he was going to be QB1,
right?
He's got keys to the car now.
Let me go here real quick because I want to give a shout out to his wife, okay? Because she is the real MVP in this situation. Because she is when you get married, that is like for your wife typically one of the moments that they've always dreamed about. And for her, I don't think she envisioned her wedding being planned around spring football. You know what I mean? So that's what I'm saying. Like she can't go. There's no honeymoon right after the wedding, right? Most married couples get to go straight to the honeymoon. He's got to come back and continue the honeymoon with us. So for her being, I shout out to Mrs. Shuck because that is incredible. That is incredible right there. So that cannot go unmentioned. I just want to throw that out there. So, but what else have you seen from the offense, though, Matt?
So I thought this heading into spring ball, like even though they've completely rehauled the wide receiver room, I still couldn't shake the thought that like they probably could afford to bring in like another wide receiver 1 type, just so they could like really give themselves plenty of options on the passing game, because we saw what happens when like the one guy who's like even somewhat reliable goes down. So Ja'Cory Brooks, he looked good the first practice, but then he got banged up, so he's only been limited to position drills and things like that. So it's then Colin Lacey, he's looked really good, but he's kind of had dealing with something of his own. There's a couple other guys who have looked really good. Like I think that I really do think that Jaden Thompson has taken a step forward. I can see him possibly being like someone that they can rely on in the passing game. I think Chris Bell, he's also a guy who has very real potential to earn like that third starting spot alongside of Brooks and Lacey. Because I mean, a guy with that like type of build and physique, and I can tell because I was not only have seen him in open practices, but I saw him at Pro Day too, because he was kind of helping catch balls with the receivers. He seems like his footwork and overall ability to like stop and go and his route running that looks like it's taken a step forward. So I think he can kind of insert himself into that mix. Jimmy Callaway, he's had some moments, but we saw what happened last year, and there were some struggles there. Kataris Hicks has looked really good. I think he's someone who could really step up and be like a straight line burner. I mean, he's had the best play of open practice so far when he mossed a defender. So there's that. And Antonio Meeks, he's looked okay. I mean, I haven't seen him make a ton of plays in sort of the open practices. So I guess I say all that to say, there's been a lot of guys up to that point, aside from Brooks and Lacey, who, have looked good in spurts, but are they true, consistent wide receiver one material? And maybe not. We'll see how the rest of this fall camp goes. But I do think that they'll probably try and go for another wide receiver one type guy in the portal when everything is said and done. And I wouldn't be shocked if there was some portal action still remaining with the wide receiver room. I don't know who's going to enter. I have suspicions, but I'm not going to openly speculate that if it blows up in my face. But
come on, Big J, we need some spicy nuggets.
I will say that, to your point, Matt, Chris Bell looked awesome at Pro Day.
Can I just make a point?
It was routes on air, and it was. I mean, there was nobody covering him, but everything was crisp, and everything was snapped off at the point. Nothing was rounded off. Just the physical size of him is something impressive. I think that he's going to be a legitimate red zone threat for us this entire year. He should be. He should use the size he has, the God-gifted ability to just go up and snatch the ball out of people's hands, or to run Jacob slant.
That's my slant king. I was about to say,
boom.
that's my slant
king,
man.
There you go.
Yeah. We'll just say that if it gets to the goal line and they pass it, I don't want to see Lacey in there.
While we're on the topic of bad nicknames from the last conversation, it's just Chris Bell, the grown-ass man.
I'm here for it.
Yeah.
Love him.
He's like Justin Marshall if Justin Marshall got bigger and continued to progress.
That's okay. So
actually, no. I think I just came up with a stupid nickname for Chris Bell. Let's call him the Bell Tower.
Okay. All right. I don't know why we went. We should have stopped you before you started.
He said it was stupid.
Yeah, he did. He did give us a little bit of warning. So yeah, can't blame you too much for that.
Am I crazy to think though, for the skill players we have, that we see a little bit more offense we were expecting to see last year from Purdue? Every time I look at Colin Lacey, I just see Rondale Moore. I don't know if it's the size, I don't know what it is, but I just see him getting involved in all kinds of creative ways. And I don't feel like Brom had that last year. Felt like he was missing that guy that he could get creative with. And as I was watching spring ball, and I watched plenty of Lacey at South Alabama, it just seemed like he's the guy that's you're gonna look up and he's gonna have 15 targets and 13 catches, and it's just gonna shock some people.
Yeah, I'm anxious to see the tight end position too. To your point, them not having the full offense, that is the position in the Brom offense that unlocks everything, and obviously makes the quarterback feel a lot more comfortable with having somebody dump the ball off to.
And the bigger back too.
Yeah. I mean, gosh, yeah.
It just seemed like last year's offense was not what I was expecting the offense to look like, and I know he was working with what he had. But it feels like this set of skill players feels much better to what he wants to do.
It's a lot more options, that's for sure.
Yeah, not only are there more options, it's more complete, and it's more so caters to, like you said, Vince, what Brom wants to. You literally took the words out of my mouth. Having not only a tight end to be a reliable option with passing, but multiple options that you can develop that forces defense to kind of cater to an additional area of the field and further creates more mismatch, and that takes pressure off of the receivers to try and have to create separation right then and there. But something, and I wrote about it actually a few days ago, that
where would they find that at?
On si.com/college/Louisville over at Louisville Report. But
sell yourself.
Click on it.
If I don't got me, who got me? But anyways, something that I think is actually going to further unlock the potential of the offense is the fact that Louisville's top two running backs are basically a different archetype of running back than what Jordan Grindo was. Because, I mean, and that's not a slight to those two at all. I mean, they did phenomenal in what they could do. Like, Jordan was a fantastic one-cut speed back, and Garindo was like a more well-rounded guy, but like speed was an underrated element of this game. I mean, we saw what we did in the combine.
Turned out to be the speed guy.
Yeah, no kidding. But and like you said, he turned out to be a speed guy, and like that's two guys who are predicated on speed. And then you've got Maurice Turner, who once ran pace for pace with Tyreek Hill, speed guy. And then you've got Keywan Brown, who is not speedy, but he knows how to read. But he's not really like a super physical back.
He's so violent. I love him.
I know, that's but you've got a lot of guys who, I don't want to say are the same type of running back, but whose primary trait or primary aspect of their game is close to the same. So a lot of speed guys. Now you've got Penny Boone and Donald Chaney, whose style of play is literally run through a motherfucker's face. Right. Like, they are physical. They not only take content, they seek it, they initiate it. It gives you some more added options to running the ball, like in between the tackles. Chris Barkley actually said it best, like, whenever you see these fronts where like they just load the box, and he talked about how teams like NC State and Florida State, that's like how they were able to stop them, because like they just threw everyone in the box and like they couldn't really get a lot going. Granted, the quarterback didn't help them a lot, but that's another here. But they loaded the box and forced the running backs, forced them to try and throw it, but they kept running it to like slightly smaller guys, not as physical guys, and Jordan and Garindo. Whereas you've got guys like Penny Boone and Donald Chaney, and like I said, they will take that contact and try and fight for all those yards, like 3 yards in the cloud of dust type of football. So those are two really physical options. Then you've also got Maurice Turner, like I said, speed back. You've got Isaac Brown, who he's really starting to hit his stride the last couple of practices. There was one run where he just shot out of the cannon, like he's explosive. And then you've still got Keywan Brown on campus, who like he's not as fast, but like I mentioned, like his top trait is his ability to kind of diagnose like the line and try and find the right hole to kind of bounce through. And he looks like he's even started to like add an extra gear to his open field. And that's not even taking into account that we'll also see Duke Watson come on campus in the fall. So what you're left with is a running back room who, while the players at the top of the depth chart are different, the complexity of the room is a lot different. And you have a lot more options, like, oh, it's 3rd and 1, put Boone in. Oh, it's like 2nd and 7, like we can put in a speed guy here. What kind of defensive front are they playing? You've got a lot more options. So it's going to force defensive fronts to kind of take that into account, like, oh, maybe their passing game is not doing well. Let's stack the box. We'll get the physical guys in there. If they kind of spread out a little bit when the passing game is going, put guys like Maurice Turner and Isaac Brown in there, or maybe even like Penny if they think that he can burst one off. So I think.
Funny enough, you mentioned Penny. We're going to play with a new toy here because I think it's unfair to refer to Penny as just exclusively a power back. Like, I feel like he's a man who can do both. So let's play with the new toy we have here at the State of Louisville, the Telestrator. So we've got a couple of Penny Boone plays that I've lined up to sort of highlight some different things that he can do here. So play number 1, we've got Penny highlighted in the backfield. He looks, one cut, gets upfield, gets past. Nice block by the referee there. Goes, and then he fights the secondary, bulls, gets another couple, 2 or 3 yards. So now this is more of a play where Penny Boone can show off really how shifty he is. So got him highlighted in the backfield. With the ball, fights through the line, jump cut, miss. Makes a man miss. Cut, miss. Bounce outside, throws that stiff arm, and rumbles for another 3 yards. So showing off, okay, good jump cut, shifty, able to make plays. What about straight line speed? We're in the middle of northwestern Ohio in the snow. Gets a ball, finds a hole up the middle, gone. He's off to the races. No one's going to catch him. Off to the end zone, touchdown Toledo, touchdown Penny Boone. I do have one issue with this play, though. And did you see it on the first run? Because you're going to see it here. Don't Deshaun Jackson it. Get to the end zone, Penny, please. For some reason, if you're watching this, Penny, please wait one last step before you start to stunt.
No.
Please.
That's prime can't get right tape. That's prime can't get right tape.
Oh man!
I mean, for me, the thing that I love about those highlights in particular is whenever he is downfield, like you're not going to be able to arm tackle him. You're going to have to come with something to bring him down. And I mean, he's one guy. He's probably going to get 2 to 3 yards after that every single time. And the NFL scouts love that because he's falling forward every single time. That was one of the knocks on guys like Brandon Radcliffe and some others is just the fact that they could not fall forward on a lot of their runs. It was get hit and kind of go backwards.
Yeah, that's not going to be a problem with Penny. Like if you try to arm tackle, you're gonna have a bad time. But yeah, so
well, real quick, I was just gonna say I don't want to be devil's advocate, but I do just want to ask the question that I think a lot of people have when you have a guy that's coming from the MAC, right, which is not a premier football conference. Look, Maction is great. We all love a good Maction Tuesday night, right? Like, look at all of the 5 heads shake at the same time. This is the most degenerate football podcast ever. Right?
Bunch of sickos.
It's just there are concerns though when he's taking a step up with his size. Like, does he have the home run speed that you do need against some of the big schools, right? Because this year's schedule, it's not as if last year's schedule was the worst ever, right? The numbers ended up shaking out, but this year it's just a little bit of a step up. You have Notre Dame on the road, you have Clemson on the road, you have Miami. Obviously, I know that Pittsburgh's defensive line has always historically been really good, and then Kentucky's defense has really handled Louisville the last couple of years. So does he have the speed? No, I didn't disrespect the Mac, Mr. Hickman here. No, sir. Like I said, I love a good Maction Tuesday. You go and convince your wife that we need to be watching Bowling Green and Kent State on Tuesday night, okay? That's dedication to the Mac. No, but I do think, though, Matt, just like I said, does he have the speed? I think that's the question.
Oh, absolutely. I actually, that's something that I was pleasantly surprised with when I've seen out of Penny Boone in open practice, that he is a lot more speedy and has a lot more open field speed and all that good stuff. So that was one thought that I had on Boone.
That's what the video board's for, man. Breakaway speed. Do not look. Do not turn around. Don't look back. Use the video board and just keep running.
Right, but like we've all got the Jalen Mitchell PTSD from Wake Forest in 2019, where it's like just a little faster.
I'll never forget telling him after the field, him being like, "Oh,
yeah." I think that the speed, that people have talked about, if that's translating, then that's obviously a huge weapon for Louisville. But I could see a scenario in which obviously I don't want this to happen, but that we get into the season and we're seeing live action. It's like, his speed doesn't necessarily translate in terms of like being able to break away from ACC defenses against Clemson, against whatever. I'm hoping it's the opposite, and that you see him really like elevate and take that next step, and the competition almost makes him better. But I think it's it's not set in stone that he's going to be able to dominate from day one just because of his size, because of the fact that taking a step up, there's a lot of different factors there. So anything else, Matt, in terms of players? You've mentioned a lot of names from a standout standpoint. Is there anybody that stood out to you? And then is there anybody, not to put anybody on blast, but is there anyone that maybe has underwhelmed you or maybe surprised you in how little they've seen snaps or reps? Because I think there's a lot of excitement about a lot of guys. That's what happens when your team is this good. So what have you seen from a standout and kind of not so much?
From a standout, oh man, there's been a lot of good players.
That's a good sign.
Yeah, no, there really has. I'm gonna highlight someone who, when he committed, I thought, okay, yeah, there's a chance that he could be, a decent guy in this offense. But I've seen him in spring ball, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like this dude's a physical freak, and he's like getting involved with the ones and twos. He's getting lined up in different positions, and I'm talking about tight end transfer Jaleel Skinner. Like I thought it was like penciled in that Mark Redmond was going to be like the starter, and I still think he's going to play a huge part of the offense. But with Redmond not here because he's finishing out his final year at San Diego State, Jaleel's gotten a lot of the snaps there, and every time I see him, I'm like, good Lord, that man is huge, and he can.
You gotta be careful here, man. My God, that man is huge. We gotta frame that as a sound effect for Matt.
Mark it. We'll get some out of context, Matt.
Yeah, put it on the mixtape. But no, he's lined up at wide receiver. He's lined up at wide receiver at 6'6". He's taking some snaps out there, and like he's made plays in the middle of the field. He's done it on the sideline. And he's done it with several of their quarterbacks. Like he looks good. In terms of someone who has maybe disappointed some, oh man, to be honest, nothing really stands out at the moment. I'm sure I'll think of one in like 5 minutes.
That's good though.
But
right when we're in the middle of the next segment. But it's to say what I'm assuming Jacob was about to say. It's good that no one is hands down like, oh God, this guy's just the worst. So it's good to know that no one is an anchor.
Yeah,
I do think if there's anything that is I hate to even use the word concerning because it's not like a super duper huge concern, because I do think the battle for the backup quarterback is going to go all the way up through fall camp. I think it's going to come tooth and nail between Harrison Bailey and Pierce Clarkson.
Say that a few more times just for the algorithm and engagement. Pierce Clarkson, Pierce Clarkson, Pierce Clarkson.
That's a man who knows his SEO. But I love it. But yeah, in terms of like what sort of quarterback that Shuck is, bigger dude, huge arm. Bailey's got that. He's not as mobile as Shuck is, but in terms of like the ability to pass the ball, Bailey's got a similar mold. And Pierce Clarkson's a little bit different, but he presents like a different opportunity in how you can approach things. But the one thing I do want to continue seeing Pierce get more consistent at is throwing the deep ball. And he's done it a few times in spring ball. Like I think it was like the third practice, he threw an absolute strike, like a frozen rope to Chris Bell up the sideline, and it hit him in the numbers. But something that I've noticed, and I noticed it like almost immediately when I saw him taking reps in the first team, is that his throwing motion on like throws that are 20 or so yards past the line of scrimmage, it takes a noticeable amount more effort to get that ball out than it does on throws or like, intermediate to short. Like for him in like the short area of the field, it's more like just get the ball out pretty quickly. Whereas like if it's one where it's a route where the receiver has to like, get space, or it goes down the field and it takes a second or two for it to develop, I've noticed that Pierce has a ton more effort and a ton more, emphasis on getting his arm and shoulder involved. Now, of course, it's a long throw, but it seems like based on his throwing motion, it seems like it's a little, I don't want to say unnecessary per se, but it seems like there could be some efforts made to kind of correct that a little bit.
Matt, just yes or no names. Do all of these quarterbacks play for Louisville at the start of the fall?
Oh, that's good. Cool.
I say no. I'm just wondering what you think.
I'm not going to say this based on anything I know. I'm just going on a gut feeling here. I'm going to say no.
Yeah, agreed.
I'm not gonna drop anyone by name, but you can kind of ascertain who I'm talking about by name who I haven't mentioned.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Is what it is.
Same thing.
Interesting.
Like, I mean, see, at some point, there's. I know Rom has a lot of quarterbacks, but I mean, at some point, if you're
there are more on the way coming in too. So
I know exactly. Like Keith, you and I, we're super high on Deuce Adams.
Oh yeah. Oh my God, I can't wait.
I love Deuce.
I have dreams of watching Deuce throwing touchdowns to Dylan Messman. It's going to be great. Just give us 2-3 years to make that happen.
Yeah. So I do think eventually someone's going to get lost in the shuffle at quarterback, and I do eventually someone gets lost in the shuffle at running back too, because they've got 6 guys on the roster right now, and like I said, or like you said, Jacob, at the beginning of the show, there are a few scholarship spots over. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Someone got to go.
Yeah.
Someone somewhere. It's just what it is.
That makes for a very competitive spring. If you know that there's a potential that there might not be a spot for you, you certainly should be giving your best. Not that you shouldn't otherwise, but you know how it is with 18 through 22-year-olds. All right, let's run through real quickly just some of the comments we've got. I can't encourage you all enough to get involved with the show. Be sure to follow us at Pink Seats Pod, at the State of Lou, at U of L Report, YouTube at the State of Lou. Live on all platforms. I shouldn't say all. There's a lot. I was looking through the list of platforms that you can go live on. I'm like, what the hell are these things, man?
There are a couple that I can't pronounce. Like,
yeah,
I don't know Mandarin or Korean or whatever it is, but
yeah. Sadly, I couldn't connect my OnlyFans account. I tried, but so yeah. Be sure to subscribe to that. Yeah. No, but just running through some of the comments. How has Ben Perry looked? Haven't heard his name much throughout camp. You know, no one really talks about Ben Perry ever. Like, he is an unsung hero of this defense. I mean, last year I can think of numerous occasions in which his ability to set the edge helped Louisville, like their defense, absolutely shut down opponents. But it's stuff like that. Like, he may not have made the tackle, but it's stuff like that that doesn't necessarily get printed in the newspapers or written about on the blogs. It's not on the stat sheet. There's no football assist. So have you seen, what have you seen from him? Because realistically, he should be one of the leaders of the defense.
I mean, he's looked good, but the thing is with like a lot of those guys at star or that linebacker and safety spots, there's just been so many people who look good. Like, I mean, bar none. I mean, there's been so many stand-up performances. Like, not to say that Ben Perry's looked bad, but there have been some other guys who have looked like just as good. Like, I think Tamarion McDonald, who's like a star, but he's more so like a star in the fact that in Tennessee's scheme, he was more like a third cornerback and not a true like linebacker safety hybrid. Like, Tamarion McDonald has looked fantastic. Wesley Walker, whenever he has gotten into some, I think he's also kind of dealing with an injury. He just looks good as well. Antonio Watts, he was someone who really stood out last year. He's made a couple plays, but yeah, I mean, I haven't really mentioned much of Ben Perry, and that's not to say that Ben Perry has done bad. It's just that, spring ball is not really like really trying to prepare for an opponent. It's more so just trying to like digest the playbook. And if you're a veteran who's been there a long time, there's not really like a huge reason to like get a ton of reps.
Yeah, I mean,
spring ball's for learning.
Training
camps for the toxic physicality.
Coaching offices are definitely prepping week 1 and week 2 right now. I can promise you that much. That's
true. Yeah,
middle of spring ball.
Yeah,
like, why am I here at 9:00 on a Tuesday?
I will say though, it's not as if we're in year 4 of Jeff Brom in this defense, right? We're in year 2. So for a guy like Ben Perry, there should still be, and for really any veteran third or fourth year starter, there should still be a dedication to, making sure that you're learning and really executing at the highest level. So I think that no news on Ben Perry is good news, right? That means he's doing his job.
They could be trying him out at something else. They could be trying him in a different position, not position, but a position within his position, different spot in the defense, moving him around to just see how he does in spring ball. It's really what spring ball is all about, like you guys have said.
Yeah, it's kind of experimenting what you got
and staying healthy.
Yeah.
Yes.
Next question: has there any info on basketball recruits? I think you got the wrong show.
Dylan Messman, power forward out of Michigan, coming to Louisville to play tight end. Very, very high on him.
Yes, look at that.
I don't know, but seeing Bobby Petrino and John Calipari on the same athletic department payroll is awesome.
That is not as good as he gets because of a combination of coaches, man. That is a fantastic duo there. I mean, it really is. Arkansas is just such an interesting place. Can we get a Telestrator style replay of Matt's hand motions during his running back breakdown? Sadly,
I can't help it.
I do. I'm right there with you, man. They're all over the place. But sadly, my internet, like the amateur I am, cut out right in the middle of that segment. So I missed about 75% of your breakdown of Penny Boone. But still, I know that it was a beautiful breakdown. Shout out to my dog Vince. Yeah, always. Shout out to Vince, man. Vince is the real MVP. He's got the fried bologna sandwiches at the cookout.
It was a
at the
great
tailgate.
corner for us back in the day.
Okay. All right. I love to hear that, man. So be sure drop your comments, questions, get involved in the conversation here. We're gonna keep moving right along here and talk NFL draft. But before we do that, want to remind you about our friends at Frankfurt Avenue Liquors and Wine. They are the best liquor store in Louisville. Like I know there are a lot of big box stores or retail stores, but when it comes to location, when it comes to selection, when it comes to getting a drink at a bar, like that is such an underrated thing to, hey, honey, I'm going to run up to the liquor store real quick. And while I'm there, I'm going to get a beer also. Full package goods store. Get your full selection of whiskeys, bourbons, wines, beers, all of that. A ton of great local and national distributors, as well as award-winning mixologists at a full bar. Get yourself a nice craft beer. Get yourself a wonderful pour of bourbon, and do all of that at Frankfurt Avenue Liquors and Wine. Like I said, conveniently located on Frankfurt Avenue, 2115 Frankfurt Avenue. That's where you can find them. Let's talk NFL draft, guys. This, like, mom, if I ask my mom this question, like, what do I think about the NFL draft? She would say, without even hesitation, that it should be a national holiday. That is a take of mine. That weekend is sacred to me. It is a weekend in which my wife wants nothing to do with me because she doesn't understand why I have an interest in watching 360 plus players have their name called when Louisville might have one. You know, she's like, why are you watching? Just look on your phone. Like, no, I have to watch. I need to hear Trey Wingo break down the 448th compensatory pick of the draft. Like, that's what I need right now. But there is a lot of movement for Louisville here, guys, because of obviously strong combines, but then the pro day for Louisville. And Matt, you sent us what could only be listed as the Nerds Bible for the NFL draft this week, and really kind of laid out for us where Louisville guys stand and where this kind of is headed as the draft is just now literally 2 weeks away from tomorrow is the NFL draft. So Matt, let's just kind of run through these players, and this is really not just Matt, but everybody, like, you know, from an NFL and draft conversation. What I guess let me ask this: pro day, anything stand out to you? That's one. Matt, Vince, anybody on that one? And then the second one, who right now is like trending up? Who's trending down? Like, what's that look like?
I'll admit,
Stood out at
I'm
pro
speaking.
day. Go ahead, Matt.
I think Gilbert. I don't think he's going to get drafted, but Gilbert Farson, he looked pretty good. I think you and Vince and I can both agree with that. Jarvis Brownlee, Jarvis, he looked really good. I think he was by far and away like the best DB to take part, and I think that that did take into account like why he's starting to trend up some draft boards. Actually, on the Dane Brugler's guy, like he was Louisville's highest rated in terms of like projected draft position. He was their highest rated prospect. He's got him projected as, I think, a third or a fourth round. Yeah, third to fourth round selection. So, I mean,
I think he falls a lot in the Marlon character type category of recent years where, you know, I think he'll hang around on it. He might go as an undrafted guy or a later round guy, but he'll definitely hang around on a roster somewhere.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And as far as like the trending down part, I mean, it sucks, but I can understand because of how the NFL is and what they like and what they don't like. And I think not Jarvis, we just talked with him. Jawar Jordan is someone who's starting to trend down a little bit. And I mean, like, it's not really his fault. I mean, he is a smaller back, and he dealt with that nagging hamstring injury throughout half the season. So there's already sort of concern about his slight frame. And Vince, I'm pretty sure you and I can agree that, like, when looking at Isaac do his drills and then Jawar do his drills, it seemed like that hamstring injury or whatever injury he was still dealing with was still like kind of hampered.
Particularly on like the jump cuts where he had to, you know, use the extra explosion to get out after the jump. In between those bag drills where he was running right at who was it, like Chris Bell or whoever was housing a cheeseburger at the time, like
MJ
was housing a cheeseburger. But during that period, you could really tell just the extra the oomph that it takes to get out just wasn't there for whatever reason. Obviously, the reason is probably the hamstring, but I mean, it's just hamstrings, quads, things like that. They're hard to address. I mean, I've seen guys go from week one of fall camp through like halfway through the season with that hamstring I don't know if you all see it at practice, Matt. You probably do often, like the hamstring tape that's attached at the hip, going all the way down to the ankle that acts the band that acts as a hamstring for the player. I mean, you see guys use that almost through the entirety of the season, and I mean, it's unfortunate, but there's 1 or 2 guys almost every year.
That sucks. As somebody who's got really weak hamstrings and cramps up a lot, that sucks.
Corners, like you see corner, it happened to them a lot because they're not, turning and running often. A lot of their stuff is just a back pedal. So as soon as they go to turn and run and sprint, pop a hamstring, often.
It's unfortunate.
Yeah.
Really unfortunate.
Yeah. And fullback teared ACL, so that's pretty common, too.
Right. Well, and then severe brain injuries. Knees and brains.
I will say, to shift notes a little bit, one player who
One player who?
Yeah, I was
sorry. I'm working on stuff in the background. Sorry, a little bit of producer's error. Still green. That's on me. Hand up. I was actually going to lead us into a player that's actually gotten a lot of love coming up to the draft in this process. Not necessarily rising because they were already thought of pretty highly. Was Jamari Thrash?
Yeah.
So much so that Steve Smith, former Panthers great, on his, I believe it's Cut It Up podcast on YouTube. We'll have a link to that in the description on YouTube as well for you all to tune in. Had a segment where he was talking about and bragging on Jamari Thrash quite a bit. I've only cut out about a minute here. It's about probably 15, 20 minutes conversation, I think, if off the top of my head. But he does a great job going in depth and breaking down what Jamari Thrash does really well. And we're going to show you a little bit of it here.
Keith, should we be hearing it?
Yes.
Okay. I don't hear anything. I don't know if anybody else does. Yeah, no audio here so far, but just some good footage here, which...
Interesting. I wonder if it's just playing on my computer rather than actually playing over that. So, chat, let us know if you can hear Steve Smith.
Yeah. If not,
he's probably talking about him winning at the line of scrimmage right there with his hands.
Oh, yeah.
You see the hands,
breaks away,
attacks the outside. He's getting
looks at the quarterback
inside that way.
Yeah, breaks well to top of the route.
Gets the cornerback to look at the quarterback. Breaks when the corner looks.
Man,
super smart receiver. Like you can see that. You could see that in game 1 against Georgia Tech. I mean, it really, like, the route tree was unlike any receiver we've had recently. I mean, just in terms of the combination of skill, speed, versatility, and then that mental and IQ of a receiver. I mean, it really stood out. And you've seen Jamari Thrash, obviously his stock was kind of at its lowest point at the end of the season because of all the injury, concerns with his hand and wrist, whatever it was, and really his production dropping. But since then, since he's been healthy from the combine to pro day to some of the workouts that he's been in, it's enough now to where it really begs the question, will he be the first Cardinal drafted? I saw today, I think Bleacher Report's most recent draft had him as a 3rd rounder and maybe like the 8th or 9th receiver drafted. I mean, this is a super deep class, right? We're going to have a receiver drafted probably at 4, maybe 5, 6, then, another couple at 8, at 10, 15. So you're talking about Jamari Thrash being in the upper echelon of this class of receivers, and you've seen comparisons to guys like a Jacoby Myers, who has, played on several, and not necessarily great teams, but he's been a part of some, where he's been one of the top receivers with both the Raiders and the Patriots, and so that's a really high comparison. And I could see Jamari going, and playing in a variety of systems, but I would love to see him where he can be a possession guy, like where he can run some of those routes that we just saw. Like they're not relying on him to play in the slot necessarily and just be a burner, but he can be a guy akin to like a Wes Welker or one of those guys who can just really get the ball and move the chains for you. Even if it's a 3-yard pass, if it's a 14-yard pass, his ability to read defense, his ability to combine that with that skill, I just think that that's invaluable at the next level. And if he gets paired with a quarterback, it's over for defenses.
What I think Steve was highlighting there, because you saw him circle at the very beginning of the play, Jamari right off the line of scrimmage, and you saw him go back to that snippet both times whenever we were watching that clip. And what I assume he's talking about is how Jamari is at the line of scrimmage with not standing up, not raising, not giving the DB his chest to get, jammed up and everything. And at the same time, you saw both times Jamari use his hands at the line of scrimmage to move the DB's arms and to get him going in a direction that he wants him to go. You saw him on the last clip to stick it on the outside, stick his outside foot in the ground to really get that DB, to even turn in his head to get that DB to bite going back that way and then break it back off going outside and to toe step it to get both feet down. That's something that you might not, to get both feet down. I mean, you need that in the NFL, obviously, but college players don't really think about that a lot of times. But a high-level football player knows that looks good on film because an NFL scout knows that you're already thinking about that type of possession play.
So I'm doing a little bit of an audible here because something I like to do when looking at draft prospects is try and think of a good player comp, because I think that's a really good way to try and give some fans an idea of who someone's going to be kind of based a lot, if anything, on physical measurables, on height, weight, 40 speed, all that good stuff. And I was just kind of, while you were talking, trying to think and plugging in some of his measurables and whatnot, thinking who does Jamari Thrash kind of match up well measurables wise? And I use this site called Mock Draftable that really does a really good job at doing just that. And when taking Jamari Thrash's physical intangibles, and they line up the most current Washington Commanders receiver, Jahan Dotson, and he's not
for sure.
He's a good comp. He's not the primary option in that system because you've got Terry McLaurin, who's probably one of the more unheralded guys in the league, but Jahan Dotson's a pretty good number 2 option.
Right. I'd like to go
Not
a little bit
comp.
beyond Jacob's point. I don't think he's going to be like Wes Welker, but I think he's going to be a little bit more than that. Definitely like that in the slot. I see what you're saying with that, but I think he's a legit number 2 option for somebody to where, he could fool somebody into thinking he's a number 1 this come his second contract and get paid big. You know what I mean?
Look, man, number 2 receivers get paid well. Look at the contract that Gabe Davis just got with the Jaguars. He's a great example of somebody who can find a role. And speaking of which, Buffalo, that'd be a great fit for Jamari Thrash in terms of the need for somebody to play right away and then the ability to play in a dynamic offense. I know you all would hate that as Colts and Dolphins fans, but I just talking about the kind of finding that combination of need and then the scheme. I love that fit there. That would be fantastic. Look, if he goes to Baltimore, I'm not going to complain. Just send every Louisville player to Baltimore at this point, so we can just rename all the bars around here, like the Raven, the Grand Baltimore,
Raven and the Cardinal.
Yeah, right, exactly. So yeah, I think that he's going to translate and be a guy much like Isaac Garindo, who we'll talk about next, but I could see him by middle to late next year being a guy that is a waiver wire, which is where my mind always goes on the fantasy side. Waiver wire gem. Somebody might draft him late and try to stash him. He probably won't get a ton of snaps early, but by the end of the season, when as he kind of gets comfortable, I wouldn't be shocked to see him be a 400 or 500 yard receiver in year 1. A couple of touchdowns, and then really setting up year 2 and beyond to become a star receiver in the NFL. Maybe I'm a homer. I don't know.
Well, there's never been a better time in the NFL too to be a receiver, where even wide receiver 3s are getting such huge volume that if you've got any kind of talent, if you can run the route tree that Thrash can, you can make a name for yourself, carve out a role for yourself on just about any team.
And what's separating a lot of these guys is being able to decipher coverages, leverages of the DBs and linebackers and things like that while they're downfield. That's what's going to separate these, wide receiver 2s and 3s into being really good wide receivers. And that's one thing that clearly in those clips that Jamari does extremely well.
Yeah, when you look at his numbers, like 63 catches for 858 yards and 6 touchdowns last year, and towards the end of the season, as I mentioned, he had the injuries, and you saw his production fall off significantly, right? Like between Virginia and Miami, he had 4 catches. He had 7 against Florida State, where they really started to kind of get him back involved, 6 against Kentucky, but for him to put up that stat line, I mean, if he had been healthy for a full 14 games, you're talking about potentially a 1,500-yard receiver. Like he could have been, and putting him, a record season for Louisville. And so I think that with that health, the offseason where he's able to focus on, getting healthy, really, getting in that space of, the training for the draft and then going to the next level, I think that he could translate really well. I also think, when you talk about finding a receiver anywhere, I've been saying this for the last couple of months, the NFL is a find a running back anywhere league. They don't care if you are, playing for the jailhouse team like The Longest Yard and what was his name? Earl Maggot, Nelly's character in that movie.
Nice.
They don't care.
I always wanted to wear the penny, just the penny jersey because of him in that in the movie. Just the shoulder pads of the penny, seeing him flop on the sides. That looked so cool as a kid.
As the old guy in the room, it hurts me that you refer to the Adam Sandler version of that as the default version of the movie.
I'm sorry. I know. I should have gone back to the original, but my childhood was growing up with the little Band-Aid on my eye. So when you have Nelly in a football movie as a dominant running back with no shoes on, that's
got his cleats out of a birthday cake.
Yeah, right. Where's Cheeseburger Eddie when you need him? But no, and I do think that kind of moving forward, Isaac Guerendo, he's going to also be in that contention of the first running back drafted, because you don't just go and dominate the portal, or the combine, and then, kind of see that translate to late rounds unless you were either like completely off the radar, which I guess you could say he was to an extent, or when you go to pro day, you fall flat on your face and those numbers look like an anomaly. Right. So from you guys, what I've just kind of gleaned in our conversations and talking to you all after, it doesn't sound like Isaac, obviously stood on a lot of his numbers, because why go back and try to top when you're the best, right? You don't need to show anything else. But I'm starting to think, he's going to probably be what, 3rd, 4th, 5th round. And again, he could be another guy that I think could find himself as a starting running back in year 1. Should that be in Baltimore? I think yes. But again, I just want every Louisville player to go to Baltimore at this point. Like the Baltimore Cardinals, let's go.
Isaac's a good fit for a lot of teams because, just because of all the intangibles that you're getting, a power back, he's power, speed. He fits very well into what the NFL is looking for. He's young.
He's young and he's cheap, so he's a great fit for every team.
Exactly. Young, cheap, and on a rookie contract.
So, while we're on Guerendo, I just did the mock draftable thing for Guerendo. The first one is Darius Jackson from Eastern Michigan draft class of 2016, but the second one is what really piqued my interest. The one that he's the running back who's got the second most comparable measurables to him, Breece Hall.
That's a good one.
Interesting. I was going to say David Montgomery. I think he's a lot bigger weight wise, but I just feel like David Montgomery is one of those guys that's like real big, and you're like, damn, he's actually kind of fast. That's a little shocking.
Yeah, no, he's definitely a bigger back, that's for sure. But I honestly think he's got the physical intangibles to match up in a lot of schemes. Honestly, it's one thing to have speed. If you've got the good combo of speed and power, you can find your way onto any plethora of rosters.
There's no way Clyde Edwards-Helaire is on a roster still, and Isaac Guerendo won't end up on an NFL roster somewhere.
Catching strays, man. Jeez.
Let's put it that way.
No, they're just going to do that thing where the Chiefs only have a running back as their starter for 2 years and then move on to the next one. Pacheco's got 1 year left in him before they do that. So
right. The Chiefs are like Leonardo DiCaprio with 25-year-old women. At the time they turn 26, that's the 3rd year of their career. We're done with you. We're throwing you to the curb.
Now, Matt,
I saw that Joseph Adai one.
I was about to say, as a Colts guy, I'm shocked you didn't go with Adai.
Because that's a very niche thing. People who
niche podcast.
Darius Jackson's not. What?
That's a good point.
We're in the very good podcast.
Oh my God.
Shout out Tanner Hickman. You're with friends. Myself and Vince, also Dolphins fans. We would love to see Isaac in a Miami uniform.
If they waste draft capital on a running back again this year, I just don't know what they're doing down there.
Look, man, they get 5 running backs a year. They all get hurt, and then they all end up with like 1,000 yards.
They've got to stop doing this.
It's just every year, and you go throw Raheem Mostert into the mix there. A couple of other guys that are just like being tossed around the league. It's crazy to me. How about from the defensive side, a guy who could be in the same conversation as being drafted first, Jarvis Brownlee? I think that until we walked through some of this draft guide together, which again we'll be sure to share all the links and everything out on the YouTube side of things afterwards if you want to check this out. But Jarvis Brownlee struggled last year, had his kind of flashes, or 2 years ago, and then this past season really kind of came alive, had those injuries. But I don't think anybody really thought he would end up being a 3rd, 4th round guy, maybe a late round, kind of flyer. But it seems like, Matt, he's flying up draft boards in a way.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, his game does have a bit of boom or bust to it because he is so aggressive, and with that aggression, it comes with some risks you take. But like on the opposite end of the spectrum, when you get the rewards, I mean, like he lives to jam receivers at the line and kind of throw them off of their route and off their timing and really disrupt that. And like if that pays off, like it can completely blow up that side of the field or that route, or like if it's the primary route and you've got that receiver like knocked off of his timing for like a second or two, that's going to automatically force the quarterback to go to his next read and they have to go through that, and that gives the line some time to kind of close in on him. So like while he does take some risks, he's dramatically cut down on the risks he took from 2022 to 2023.
And he seems like the player with the most upside. Like he could play the nickel, he could play the outside. Like it seems like he could play just about anywhere at the next level. Where Thrash feels a little bit of a safer option for us, Brownlee feels like the guy who could really be something.
Him not being afraid to make a tackle either is huge. I mean, at the corner position,
that's a good point. That's a great point.
Hit or miss sometimes. I mean, we were very familiar with Jair not being afraid to hit anybody, and Brownlee's just like that as well.
Yeah, I was trying to pull his numbers up. He had 30 tackles last season, which was, kind of middle of the pack, and Quincy Riley had 48, which, really kind of tells you what he can do this next season. But, Jarvis only played so much because of those injuries. But, really when he was on the field, defenses they really didn't attack him a ton. And when they did, he had 7 pass deflections. So he took care of business.
That's because a lot of those college players are not used to getting jammed at the line of scrimmage, like how Jarvis can jam somebody. It's a lot. Like going back to the Jamari Thrash clips that Steve Smith was talking about, highlighting how he was likely not raising his chest, things like that. That's the biggest thing out of a tight end position too, making your runs look like passes whenever you're going downfield. So, yeah.
And he only had 1 interception. I don't think I realized that. I thought he had more than that. That tells you if you're a 3rd, 4th round guy and you only had 1 interception, like you're doing something right. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't necessarily, you don't always have to have these crazy astronomical numbers, especially when you're a position in which oftentimes quarterbacks avoid you. You know what I mean? Like that almost speaks to itself just as much as 8 interceptions. So it's really going to be interesting to see where Brownlee goes. I told you all this a while back. Like, I think he reminds me a lot of Trayvon Diggs of the Cowboys in terms of like, he's going to probably give up several touchdowns, but he might lead the NFL in interceptions in his rookie season. Like it could work out like that. So I wouldn't mind seeing him there. And I forget where was it, Dan Quinn was their defensive coordinator. Did he go to Washington? Where did he go? I cannot remember where he went to be the head coach of. Or Washington. Seattle. I forget what it was. Wherever it is, Washington. I would love to see, Jarvis potentially go and be like his version of Trayvon Diggs there. I think that'd be pretty cool. Last thing here on the NFL draft. You mentioned earlier, Vince, Marlon Character. I could throw out like 14 other Louisville guys who over the years have stuck around and hung on to rosters after either being drafted in the 7th round, 6th round, maybe they're undrafted, maybe they play in one of the development leagues. Who is it for you all? And when we look at some of the names that we've talked about, it seems like we've kind of said that Garendo, Jamari Thrash, and Jarvis Brownlee are going to kind of rise to the top, likely be the ones that are drafted probably fairly early, maybe day 2, day 3. Who is it from the rest of the guys, like a Jawar Jordan, Storm Duck, Cameron Kelly, Brian Hudson, Gilbert Frierson, Jack Plummer, Willie Tyler, Eric Miller? Who of those guys, in your all's opinions, would be most likely to stick around on an NFL roster if they weren't drafted? Just based off of what you've seen, their work ethic, stuff like that.
It's gotta be Brian. It's gotta be Brian Hudson.
Gotta be Hudson.
Yeah.
I feel like
Hudson for
there's
sure.
not much of a debate. In reading Brugler's draft guide, I was shocked he had Hudson as low as he did in that evaluation process.
I kind of was too,
I
honestly.
agree.
But O-line plays one of those tricky things where it's tough to evaluate. So I'm just trying to get the benefit of the doubt there. I feel like if he does not get picked, that honestly might be a blessing in disguise for him, because then you're able to negotiate an actual contract, as we saw with Malik last year.
Yeah, man. A lot of guys want to go undrafted. I mean, there's guys that have their agents tell teams, don't draft me in the 7th round so that I can have my pick of who I want to go to afterwards. That's fairly common, especially for some of these guys that get contracts nicer than some of the drafted guys. I mean, it's
like
crazy.
Malik.
Malik, right? Malik got an $80,000 signing bonus?
$800,000 something deal. It was wild.
But I think he's the anomaly, though. But yeah, no, it's the same price.
Hey, I would rather be the anomaly than get left out, man.
So
the thing with Brian, like, I guarantee it is the injuries. It has to be the injuries talk and the injury concern with that at that position, taking blows every single play. My counterpoint is that he played through a lot of those injuries. I agree. He played through them. Yeah.
I almost said the kid showed I was going to say the kid showed he was tough. He's a grown ass man. He's right there he's with Chris Bell. That man played at a very high level at 75% with the injuries that he had throughout the course of the season.
Mm-hmm. You could say 40%, man. I mean, you talk about, really, in terms of the injuries. Yeah. I mean, it was,
whoever picks him up will be getting a steal. Yeah. Out of the other players listed, a guy who I think will have a chance of getting size strictly because of the tools available to him, Eric Miller. Just a big hoss over there. I believe he played predominantly on the right side before coming to Louisville. And I think that's where a lot of NFL teams are looking at using him. But that's a big body. He's got long arms. He's got the physical tools to get the job done. I wouldn't be shocked to see a team take a chance on him. And hey, there's also other leagues available if players don't make that. Like the UFL's been fantastic. We've got a bunch of guards in there making plays.
Will be on a UFL team. Like not shading or anything. I think like that just fits guys like him who are not the upper echelon of NFL quarterbacks. And I just think that could be a spot for him.
Yeah, and honestly, I wouldn't be shocked if at some point in the future, like the USL becomes like the official feeder league to the NFL.
I would like a G League style sort of thing where the
NFL has more money than God. If they want to buy the USL, they can do that.
Yeah, well, they already had a partnership with the XFL, and I think they're continuing that with the UFL, but they got a free minor league right now. I don't think they're going to mess that system up. They'll cooperate and hey, here's some of our TV broadcasts. Like UFL on Fox has the NFL Cletus for some of its graphics packages and things like that.
Now I'm gonna say for my name for guys that's gonna go undrafted is Cameron Kelly, and I think he's gonna hang around on an NFL roster on plenty of special teams. Mm-hmm. He's a guy that is going to make a living on being a backup safety and playing every single special team for his. He might end up being a special teams captain by the time it's all said and done, and just make
no fear in that man. Just love.
He's who I was gonna say too, because I don't know if the numbers bear this or not, but it felt like every time we needed somebody to make a play last year, he was involved. It just felt he was everywhere when we needed it. And I think that translates.
He's built to play in the NFL. There's no doubt about that. We've seen another guy that I thought, and I think he still could end up on an NFL roster, is Quinterio Cole. We saw him make the interception in the UFL in game 1 for the Battlehawks. But, I think Cameron Kelly could 100% play in the NFL. I'm going to go a little bit different. I'm going to go with Jawar, man. I know that you guys have mentioned that some of the injury concerns are there, and that's fine. But I think that if he can get in the right situation, go to camp, get healthy, I think a team who has the right coaching staff, the right scheme, can bring his skills out. They got to get him healthy, but you can't ignore what he did.
Reverse those two.
You cannot ignore what he did at the end of last season. Really, at the beginning of the end of the year prior and the beginning of last season.
He's going to have to be healthy before getting into camp, because he will not last on a team if he's in a camp hurt.
Maybe, but you see guys go to camp a lot of the times and then get put on the reserve list or go on some of those inactive lists. Again, it's all about finding the right fit. If he can find a fit now, yes, ideally, of course, we want you want him to be healthy. There's plenty of time. I mean, rookie mini camp is in a couple of weeks, but 3-4 weeks. There's still time to get healthy, and by the time the season rolls around, that's a light year away. So I think that there's time for him to get healthy, and his speed. I get he's a little bit undersized, but you put him in a system with, just trying to think off the top of my head, like a Saints offense or, somebody who has experience being able to throw the ball to the running back, utilize them in a variety of ways. I can't get over that comparison that you made of earlier in the year of Alvin Kamara. I see it. I think it's there. That didn't go away just because he got hurt. It might have.
Okay, but no, it did in the pro day. Diminished it. That's a good word. In the pro day, it was definitely diminished in the pro day, and that Alvin Kamara comparison was perfect because you did not see that in the pro day.
I think much like Tyon Evans, I think Jawar Jordan's another one of those guys who, if he doesn't land on an NFL roster this year, we could very well see him in UFL next year, depending on roster turnover, because he's one of those guys who's like right at that precipice. He's sort of like, is he a roster guy? Is he not? And honestly, it gives him more time to get healthy and gives him a chance to demonstrate that, hey, yeah, I was hurt. I didn't lose it. I promise. So
look, he could theoretically say he doesn't make a roster this year. He gets hurt, he's still recovering from injury. By the time the UFL rolls around next season, the 2025 season, I mean, he could be at the, right where he needs to be. And all it takes is one dominant season. The best guys in that league are going to get plucked every single year. Like, no doubt. If you put production up on that field, you are going to get plucked away by the NFL.
AJ McCarron got plucked. AJ got plucked to be the backup quarterback for the Bengals.
PJ Walker. I mean, there's been a ton of guys.
Taylor Heineke.
You even go to Canada and you look at what they've done from a pass rushing standpoint to some of the defensive backs. The NFL will find you if you have talent. So if Jawar can get healthy, I have no doubt in my mind that he's going to play in the NFL. And hopefully for the rest of the guys, Gilbert Frierson, who didn't really get a lot of snaps, again, you mentioned Jack Plummer, Willie Tyler, those guys can go play in another football league now. Brock Doman is going to fucking Germany, right? Yeah. I think does he stormed up and signed in France? Like, these guys there's football to be played, man. It's not the end of the road.
Anytime I hear anybody going overseas to play football, I think of Carl Maslowski being the quarterback and coach, straight up Jackie Moonin it over in Australia. It's like,
is NFL Europe still a thing?
It is not. No, it has not been a thing since we were kids. Hey, I think
some of the teams do still exist, though. There's American style football, like I believe it's like the Frankfurt Galaxy, the Barcelona Dragons. There's still a thing, I think.
Wow, man,
but it's cool. Not branded NFL Europe.
Yeah. All right, well, that'll wrap up the NFL draft conversation. The NFL draft, again, 2 weeks from tomorrow. We'll kick off on Thursday night. I always like to try to go out to a bar and watch it. Like I said, it's like a holiday for me. Go out, get some wings, get some good beer, and sit there and watch the commissioner hug people.
Who's going number one?
Caleb Williams.
Who's going number one?
Caleb
you think
Williams.
so?
Caleb Williams
going to do it?
Caleb Williams.
Yeah. I think the biggest story of that night is going to be his outfit.
The second that they traded Justin Fields, it was a lock.
Yeah.
No, the biggest question is, how high does J.J. McCarthy move up, even though he's
right. And then how far does a guy like Mike Penix fall? Or is it Drake May? One of those guys is going to tumble, because you're right. Everybody's going to fall in love with J.J. McCarthy, and he's going to come in the NFL, and in 3 years we're going to be like, this is Daniel Jones again. Here we are.
Somebody tweeted about Drake May losing. It's like somebody's going to lose their job over picking this kid. And I was like, oh my God, I couldn't agree more.
A lot of people do.
Some GM's going to lose their job over picking J.J. McCarthy.
Yeah. If you're listening to Jim Harbaugh's crazy ass off I mean, come on now.
He's not going to get rid
that's
of
clickbait
for
an NFL coach.
All righty. Well, Jacob, I know you had things you needed to get taken care of, so we're going to let you hop off for this last little segment here.
Appreciate it, fellas.
I will be steering the ship now.
There we go. Look at me. I'm the captain now. All right, fellas. I've really appreciated this. Let me just real quick, Keith, before you kick me out of here. We're in the midst of the most important time of basketball, and we have several thousand people that have watched this. I cannot talk about how cool the football community is at this school. Keith, I know every time there's there's basketball news, you're like, damn it, talk football. Vince too. But I did want to say, like, this to me is awesome. In the middle of April, having several thousand people wanting to talk football. This is just a glimpse of where we're going. So thank everybody for listening, sharing, clicking, reading, listening, and looking at Matt's ugly face, all of that stuff. So yeah, we'll be doing this again next week. We'll be back, spring football. And just to kind of drop a little teaser here, State of Louisville taking over the Mike Rutherford Show on Friday. So if you're listening now, be sure to tune in to 96.1 The Big X. Presley Meyer and myself will be hosting Friday 3 to 6. It will be a lot of fun. We'll continue some of this conversation then. All right, fellas, I'm out of here.
Later.
All right.
Now we can talk about whatever.
Yeah, there's
Pink
no
seats
rules.
after
So one of the last little topics, and it was sort of plugged last week as a proposed idea, and of course it's always a fun thought experiment, is the Athletic put out a piece about the new proposed college football super league. College Sports Tomorrow is what it was called. Ironically enough, this league was designed exclusively for football, and there would be a separate governing body for the rest of the sports. So what is the proposed super league? Essentially, all the teams that were Power 5 last year. So Oregon State, Washington State, you get to hang out. You're still with the cool kids, as well as Notre Dame and SMU. All get to be included with the Power Conference teams, and they would be broken up into 7 conferences of 10. So 70 teams, 7 conferences. Well, 70, that's a weird number. And if you've read the piece, you know there's 80 teams total in this super league. So the other 10 come from the best of the remaining G5. So, for example, it'd be like Appalachian State, Memphis, Boise State, so on and so forth. And that one division would be set on a promotion and relegation-based system. So if you're a power conference team, you're safe. If you're not, you got to fight to earn your spot to stay in the Super League. So this was born of, we don't have money and there's litigation in place where we might have to go back and pay players due to antitrust law. I'm not smart enough, and I don't have Esquire at the end of my name, so I can't explain all the legalese to you all. They do a great job breaking it down in the article, but I'm just one man. And I know what the people like. So if you were listening closely, you heard new conferences, conference realignment. So in this new college football world, gentlemen and chat, feel free to chime in as well. Where do you want to see the Louisville Cardinals play? Now, I've already seen a couple of media entities talk about, here's what our examples were of what the new conference would look like. So, for example, this is what the Athletic proposed, and this is what Louisville's conference would have looked like with last year's results in this new Super League. And it's actually kind of cool because they have us winning the Big East, which is what they named this conference, and have us ahead of Notre Dame, West Virginia, Miami, Virginia Tech, Boston College, Rutgers, Syracuse, Pitt, and Cincinnati. So that is the Athletics example. And this is one that was put together by Reddit College Football. So big fan of Reddit CFB. If you're not following them on Twitter, I highly encourage it, especially if you're a junkie like me and Vince where, basketball's going on, but I want football.
I love that conference. I love that conference right there, bro. I mean, that's something that I look at that and I'm like, that's good enough teams to where we can make an argument for people not to call our conference week and we can win every single game.
So this is the idea that was put out by Reddit College Football. For the Pac-10, it's all the original members. For the Big 12, it's a lot of the original Big 8, plus Cincinnati and West Virginia sort of newer members. And if you do this exercise at home, you'll notice that the geography gets a little bit funky, especially like Louisville, Kentucky, Notre Dame. We're sort of like the problem children of the experiment because we're not enough in the Northeast and we're not in the Big 10. The Southwest Conference gets brought back to being Texas and Arkansas and Oklahoma schools. The Big 10 is, I believe, the original or the first 10 Big 10 members. The ACC is the original ACC. The Big East is a lot of teams that touch the Big East in periods of time, and Penn State. I don't think they ever touched Big East, but geographically, that's one that just.
Man.
I mean, geographically they're there, but no, Penn State's
Geographically,
almost always been in the Big Ten.
Well, the funny thing is, they were one of the last teams to join the Big Ten. So I think that's why they got the short end of the stick and ended up in the Big East. The SEC is the original SEC back when it was a 10-team league. And then the G5, they put the conference champions and then the highest rated teams that were afterwards. We can really ignore them. So what would you all want to tweak with this league layout right here if you had to take a look?
I want Cincinnati in our conference.
I was just about to say, I would include Cincinnati. But
so
I would include UC, but other than that, I mean, I would – Vince, you'll get a kick out of this. I would kick out Boston College.
Oh, wow. Wow.
So
going back on your boys.
So now I have a bit of a hot take on this one because I too want us to play Cincinnati, but I wouldn't have us playing Cincinnati in the Big East. I would trade us with West Virginia. So you go back to having the historic West Virginia rivalry of the backyard brawl with West Virginia Pitt, West Virginia, Virginia Tech, the battle for the Black Diamond. I believe they used to have a rivalry with Penn State as well, because not only is Louisville's been a vagabond team over the course of its history, especially like going through football, and I was talking to Matt before the show, we've been in the ACC longer than we were in the Big East. So I think it makes sense for Louisville.
Insane to think about.
I think it makes sense for Louisville to be in the Big 12. One, especially in this iteration of it, because you have Cincinnati, but also a lot of these schools are closer. Like, what would you gentlemen consider a drivable away game? Like, if you're going to take a weekend, you're going to go to a school, you're going to watch a game, you're going to hang out around the city, see what to do, and then you're going to come back.
I mean, Pitt is the only one, and that's still a 6-hour drive.
Well, funny thing is, Virginia Tech is the closest team in this Big East, and then Pitt. Wow. Yeah, Virginia Tech is geographically the closest team to us in the ACC, and we never play them. And then it would be Notre Dame, I believe, at like 4-ish hours as well.
Keith, I like swapping us out too, because you look at Colorado in that as well. I mean, you have the Deion Sanders tie with him coming back to Louisville with the home and away game with Louisville, coming back to the city there. That'd be kind of cool.
Oh, yeah, the hype around Deion. Granted, who knows how much longer he's going to be at Colorado. But
how many more years does Shadur have left? That's a pretty good
Very So Cincinnati would obviously be your closest game. But then Columbia, Missouri, I believe, is a 4.5-hour drive. We'll have why am I blanking on his name? WKY Tyler Griever, I believe.
Yep.
He's a Mizzou alum. Then next closest, I believe, is Lawrence, Kansas, and I believe that's 6 or 7 hours. And you have Kansas City that's right there that you can explore and hang out before and after game day. Lawrence,
there's also Vanderbilt.
Then Vanderbilt is historic SEC. So, but Manhattan, Kansas is an hour further than Lawrence. Ames, Iowa, I believe, is only a 7 or 8 hour drive from Louisville. And then the farthest drivable, which I consider myself Midwestern, so I love driving, would be Omaha, Nebraska. And it's like right at the cusp of 10 hours, which for comparison, Syracuse is 5 minutes closer to Louisville than Omaha, Nebraska.
Damn.
Yeah, like no one in the Big East geographically. In this iteration, we have Notre Dame, Pitt, Virginia Tech. Other than that, nobody is close to us in the Big East. So 6 out of the 9 other teams in the Big 12 are more drivable than basically Syracuse and everyone else.
Do we still have? There's still non-conference games in this realignment situation, right?
So
I don't think so, yeah.
They didn't spell it out. I would like to think, and frankly, I would like to see it where if you are a permanent Super League team, you have to schedule, and because the expanded playoffs in the scenario is 16 team, I would suggest likely going to 12-game regular season results determine conference champion, and you just roll into the playoffs. So you have your 9 conference games. I would like for, if you are a power conference team, you can only schedule a G5. So either the top 10 G5 or the remaining 50-ish. So there's about 60 something teams outside of the main 70 3 times in a 10-year period. So you're having to play other Super League teams. So non-con in this, I would like to see Kentucky, obviously. In this scenario, I'd like to see West Virginia because we're trading them places, and that would be a non-con. And then save that last one for some fun opponents or for a G5.
Yeah, see, I would definitely want, in this iteration, I would want them to force you to play a rival. You know, whoever your number one main rival is, if they're not in the same conference, you are required to play them, and then just go down the list of, oh, who's our second rival? Oh, we'd be playing Cincinnati for Keg and Nails, and then West Virginia, you know, so on and so on. So, I mean, that's the game that, I mean, you just can't lose that game. I don't know how everybody else feels.
Do you all agree that this is inevitable? Some setup like this?
I don't know if this like exact setup, but like the way
I don't mean this exactly, but
change is a brewing, Corey.
I would agree. Change is inevitable. I don't think it's going to be this much, because one of the big hangups in the article, which of course I failed to mention earlier, is that there would not be a equitable distribution of revenue that this league generates. So the big brand teams, like I believe the one specifically mentioned were Alabama and Notre Dame, would get paid more than the teams that are less popular in this league. And my thought on that is, if your league is too big where you can't distribute revenue equally, your league's too big.
Enough teams.
Exactly. So, I want this to be translated to basketball too. If we're bringing back the Big East, let's bring back the Big East, okay? Like, I mean,
well, part of what makes that difficult is for the Big East, they have so many schools that aren't FBS football, or they just don't have football whatsoever.
You're talking about all the Italian schools, right?
Well, I was going to say Catholic schools, but close enough. So I think at some point, though, a Super League will likely come to play for football, but I think it's going to be a lot closer to 20 teams than the 80 that this is proposing. Like, the Big Ten and the SEC are already demanding so much money in negotiations going over, oh, well, we want these TV revenue spots and we want the first round bye no matter what. And we want, like, at some point, they're just going to take their ball and go home. Schools in that, though, like Vanderbilt, I always feel bad because Vanderbilt's always the punching bag. Non-Greg Schiano, Rutgers, Vanderbilt, those teams are going to get pushed back. Like, hey, you either got to start spending to put out a quality football product or you're going to get going. Like, there's going to be a lot of teams that are currently take the checks, take the losses teams, shout out Bud Elliott, that will either be forced to get better or are going to get left behind. So,
see, I don't want the playoffs to expand. I'm of that company of 12 is perfect. A 12-team playoff is perfect and fine. Mm-hmm. We finally got it. I just don't want more games on top of the guy. If we're going to go more playoff games and scale back regular season games, because the guys just are not going to last. Yeah.
Get rid of
we saw what Louisville was with Jawar Jordan in his hamstring. I mean, you're just going to see more and more of that.
Yeah, if you expand it any further, you're, like you said, Vince, you're going to have to probably put on the table the possibility of taking away regular season games. And we know if you take away games, you're going to take away money. And I know these greedy bastards don't want to take away money.
I was going to say, I don't think you're ever, hey, you see this thing that's making revenue? Let's get rid of it. It's not going to work.
Right.
And plus, there's a lot of games who are fixtured on certain dates, Army Navy is always after conference championship. Ohio State Michigan is always on the final weekend of the regular season, and then there's countless other examples of this. And if you start to expand the playoff to where you impact the format of the regular season and possibly affect some of these traditional rivalries or traditionally played games, there's going to be a lot of pushback.
Oh, 100%. But I feel like there's a lot of pushback now, and TV executives just don't care. Dollar signs, bye.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So, but conference realignment is always fun. And hey, if you missed the live show, hop into the comments on YouTube. Let us know. What teams do you want to see Louisville playing? Like, I think personally, Louisville, Kansas, that sounds like it'd be kind of a fun little rivalry, like Adidas school, basketball first programs. I say very sarcastically. And both are really
school.
Both are really on the come up though, as of late. Like Lance Leipold, he's got the Jayhawks humming out there.
Hey, Kansas looks good. Kansas looks like they could be a legitimate power.
Sneaky Big 12 title contender, especially with the league as it is this year, because there's like 9 pretty good teams and no cream of the crop.
Yeah,
I will never be placing money on Kansas to win anything in football. That's just me.
And
I stand with Corey.
Oh, is Kansas the Duke style program for you, Vince?
Yeah, I mean, they definitely are they fall into the Duke category of I don't acknowledge you in football.
Yeah, I mean, I tell you what, it's going to be interesting just to see this next season of college football, just because of the current conference realignment moves that are already going to be in place. Because like I keep having to remind myself, like, oh yeah, the Pac-12 is in essence dead right now because come July,
we got the Pac-2, man.
The 2-pack.
I like the 2-pack conference.
They're gonna have a hell of a media day.
all eyes on me.
Are they gonna make it a home and away media day?
If you don't have a VPN, you can't see me.
Exactly. But yeah, no, I keep forgetting like which one of these Pac-12 schools is in what conference, like Big 10 versus Big 12, like. And it's only going to get more confusing. When
don't forget the AC Atlantic Coast powerhouse Stanford and Cal Berkeley.
It's going to be mad confusing when I hear Gus Johnson call a conference game between Oregon and Michigan.
Yeah, that's going to be weird.
Having
SMU around is weird too. Like that's just it's just weird to see.
You know, and partially in the trust tree, and I'm going to tie it back to football. A team that the ACC. True. The ACC should have added UConn. Like, yeah, the football's not exactly stellar, but as a basketball program, plus you have Boston College in the Northeast already as a geographical rival, Syracuse. Like, they geographically make more sense. Now, I get it. SMU, Heart of Dallas, new state, new eyeballs. And then we let Notre Dame still make conference decisions like, hey, let our buddies Cal and Stanford in. They're cool, we promise.
The football is not exactly stellar is actually the best thing that's ever been said about UConn football. I think they'll be running back tomorrow as a promotion.
I like Jim Mora, which he's not there anymore. I'm not going to lie.
Mitchell was there for a hot second.
I don't think they're.
Did Jim Mora get fired?
Huh?
Did
Jim Mora get fired?
I thought he resigned or got fired, but I could be wrong. He might still be there. Now let us scurry and tap. But yeah, UConn, a team that makes sense, I think, for the ACC, especially when the North Carolina boys want to focus on basketball so much. It's like,
he's still there.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I like Jim Mora. I didn't think he was going to get retained after this last season. I'm not going to lie.
Chalk that up as 2 things nice said about UConn football.
Yeah.
I like Jim Mora t-shirts.
They didn't fire their head coach.
Congrats!
Hey, I told you guys, I'm a sicko, man. I like watching those games. I don't like watching Big Ten and SEC. Like, give me all the sicko football.
No, I can appreciate like the Texas Alabama matchups. Like I love those, but like I will kill to watch like Boise State and James Madison or some random freaking matchup like
those
Chiefs. I can't watch Boise at home, bro. I can't do it. Can't do it with the Blue Field. I loved it when I was like 14. I hate it now. I guess that's me getting old.
Boise State is my college football, like to make the playoff bet that I'm going heavy on for the future.
Okay. All right.
That's like I basically just, and I know they're the odds-on favorite, but I can't see a team in CUSA stopping Liberty. Like, they schedule Cupcake, and they have so much more money and resources.
Caldwell left, didn't he?
Yeah.
No, I think Caldwell's still there. I might be wrong on that.
He left.
I thought you said
Ashton
Fall.
Jeanty's so good.
Oh
Y'all can
yeah,
have your
Shanty.
liberty.
Oh my
Give
God.
me Shanty every day.
I was praying to whatever deity would listen that he would hit the portal because it's like I want to see him play power conference football so bad. I also
So
think
good.
Sean Lewis is going to have San Diego State humming. That might be a pain in the side of Boise. Maybe not year one, but San Diego State's on the come up. I'm a big Sean Lewis guy. So that being said, at this point, we're just breaking down random G5 conference talk. So we're going to wrap things up here. For everyone that tuned in, nearly 1,900 of you across all of our platforms, thank you so much for tuning in.
Thank you. Seriously.
Be sure to follow the State of Louisville Twitter, follow the From the Pink Seats Twitter. Get on YouTube, subscribe to the State of Louisville YouTube channel. We've got 4 podcasts that come out weekly, including this one you're listening to right now if you're on the live show. And for those of you in the comments worried about hoops, we got a college basketball podcast and a lot of college
Presley Meyer
basketball
has you
content as
covered.
well. We've got
Presley Meyer
University.
has you covered.
We've got University of Louisville baseball, and we've got professional podcasts as well. The football. We've got both both Louisville professional teams, racing and FC. We have a podcast for them as well. If you stay tuned in on the YouTube, you're going to find some content you like. So that being said, I'm producer, now host Keith. He's Matt McGavick. He's Corey Miller. He's Vince Lococo. Thank you all so much for tuning in and joining us this late on a Wednesday night. Love you guys.